This is the Ramana Maharshi Self-Knowledge Satsang, a time for self-reflection and self-inquiry. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I have been blessed with years of deep teaching. I bring this to you with this satsang. The background image today is Pachaman Coil. This was a place that was frequented by Ramana Maharshi, and in 1905, for 6 months, Ramana Maharshi went from Virupaksha cave far away from the city to Pachaman Coil, where he would be safe from the plague which had infested Tiruvannamalai. This temple is said to be 1,000 years old. Ramana would come here monthly for oil baths. This is from the Ramanashram newsletter. Quote, around 1915 or 1916, one morning, the Maharshi, Palaniswami, Vasudeva Shastri, and others left the Virupaksha cave and proceeded to Pachaman Coil, taking oil and soap nut powder for an oil bath. The facilities for such a bath were ample at that place. It was on the way back from such a trip that Ramana had his second, what is called death experience at Turtle Rock. It was also at Pachaman Coil where Ramana saw a leopard drinking from a tank as a devotee, Sri Iyengar, was bathing. Ramana first said to the leopard, "Go now and come later. He would be afraid." And then Ramana gently advised Sri Iyengar that he should not bathe here at this time of day because wild animals came here, not telling him of the leopard, apparently not wanting to frighten him. Here are some photographs that Carol and I took at this place in 2009. First, this is a path from the mountainside to Pachaman Coil. It's very possible that this was the path that Ramana and his disciples took to get to the temple. And if they took this path, this would be the first look at the temple. This is the entrance to the temple with its gopuram and red and white striped walls. And after you enter the gate, there are these lines of warriors who are there protecting the temple and ready to take action if needed. This is the goddess Pachaman. This is a distant photo, magnified, so it's not as sharp as it might be. And then we walked around the temple and found these holes in the back, and Carol came and looked through the holes, and you could see the inner chamber through these holes, places where people ordinarily do not visit. And then near the temple was the temple tank. I guess this is where Sri Iyengar was bathing. Right now it's very low. It was a dry time of year. And then here are mounts by one of the South Indian gods who is a Tamil protection god. He protects the villages. A couple of boys are standing in front of the elephant, so you can see these are life-size that are at the temple. And, that's our tour. Now on to this week's reading from Ramana Maharshi's Who Am I? We are at paragraph 30, Ramana's words. That which is bliss is also the self. Bliss and the self are not distinct and separate, but are one and the same, and that alone is real. In no single one of the countless objects of the mundane world is there anything that can be called happiness. It is through sheer ignorance and unwisdom that we fancy that happiness is obtained from them. On the contrary, when the mind is externalized, it suffers pain and anguish. The truth is that every time our desires get fulfilled, the mind, turning to its source, experiences only that happiness which is natural to the self. Similarly, in deep sleep, in samadhi, when fainting, when a desired object is obtained, or when evil befalls an object considered undesirable, the mind turns inward and enjoys that bliss of Atman. Thus, wandering astray, forsaking the self, and returning to it again and again is the interminable and wearisome lot of the mind. Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss, is one of the ancient Hindu names for the Absolute, or Self, God, Brahman, Atman, Buddha nature, or whatever other name is used. These three terms, Sat Chit Ananda, are used together because in a seeker's actual experience, they are one and the same, just different names or aspects of the same thing. Happiness, Ramana says, is not intrinsic to any object, person, place, or experiences. Ramana started Who Am I teaching by writing about happiness, saying that everyone wants happiness always. But where is the source of happiness? In this paragraph, Ramana shows that the source of all happiness is within. In fact, the source of happiness is our very being. One seeks happiness in external objects, events, circumstances, people. Even the best of this happiness comes and goes. The spiritual path is a search for happiness that does not come and go. The only happiness that doesn't come and go is the bliss of being. This can be continuous only when your identity is moved to the solid knowledge and experience that I am that. Can there be being without consciousness? Can there be consciousness without being? This is something that can be verified in meditation. Look for yourself. Bliss is also seen to be of this same unitary nature, so much so that when all the noise of the mind and ego are stilled, bliss is the experience of everyone. When your mind is quiet, you may feel a deep sense of peace or bliss. Where does this bliss come from? By just noticing your existence, you may experience this bliss of being. This bliss is sweet. Nothing is needed. Just notice what is here now. Now on to our videos for this week. First is Swami Sarvapriyananda speaking from a longer talk in search
The
of bliss.
Vedas, at this point, they take a turn. The second part of the Vedas starts, what we call the Vedanta. And it starts with a story. He says, you who are seeking happiness in this way, by getting pleasures in this world and seeking something similar in the next world, consider this story. There was this dog who had a bone, which it would chew. And when it would chew the bone would cut its inner lip and draw blood there. And the dog would taste its own blood and say, that's a tasty bone. And the dog would be very happy with that bone, and it would bury the bone carefully, as dogs do. And once in a while, when it wanted pleasure, it would go and chew the bones so that it would get the taste of what it thought. The dog thought it was the taste of the bone. It was not the taste of the bone. It was the taste of its own blood. Gruesome the story may be, but the Vedas tell us, Upanishads tell us, we are doing the same thing. Whatever pleasure, happiness you find in the world outside, through food and music and art and dance and through great pursuits in life, whatever pleasure you may believe you will find in the heavens to come, all of them are not out there, not in the world, not even in the heavens. It's your own pleasure which you are tasting. It's your own self which you are tasting. According to Vedanta, we are not this body, Sharira. We are not even the subtle body inside this ideas, thoughts, the mind, intellect, emotions, not even that. Beyond this physical body, beyond the mind also, transcending both, what we are is an unchanging existence, consciousness, bliss. Sanskrit, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Pure existence, pure consciousness, pure bliss. Today we are concerned with the pure bliss aspect of it, not the existence and consciousness aspect of it. That's what we are. And what is happening is, though we are bliss itself, what is happening is, when we have desires, when we want something, I am limited, I'll be happy if I see that movie, or I go for that vacation, or I have a relationship with this person. These are the ideas, the desires which come up in the mind, and Vedanta tells us it obscures our own inherent bliss. It obscures it. We are not aware of it anymore. We do not experience it. What we experience is the dissatisfied mind. And when we struggle to get it, whatever we want, It could be that piece of cake, or it could be something very high in art or music or in business or something. When our desire, when our ambition, when our goal is satisfied, mind calms down for a while. For just a short while, the tension goes out of the mind. And our inherent bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, that shines forth in the calm mind. The inherent bliss blazes forth for just a fraction of a second or just for a little while. And that's what we experience as happiness. And the mistake we make, very much like that little dog, is that, oh, that piece of cake makes me happy. Whenever I want to be happy, I'll eat a piece of cake. Or that person makes me happy, or this place makes me happy, or this activity or this job makes me happy. That's not so. It's our inner happiness. And the proof is in our daily experience. If the piece of cake makes you happy, 2 pieces should make you more happy. You'll say, oh, Swami, it does. Well, okay, 3 pieces should make you even more happy. Then you will say, well, not so much, but it does increase my happiness. The first lesson of economics, whenever you go to learn economics, in the first class itself, they'll teach you the law of diminishing marginal utility. You get happiness from consumption of something you like, more happiness if you consume more, and more happiness if you consume even more, but each time you consume a little more, you get smaller and smaller increments of happiness. The utility, the marginal utility, the addition to your total happiness which you get becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. It diminishes. The law of diminishing marginal utility. And thousands of years ago, Vedanta tells us that's what happens to us. Just look at your own experience. If those things give us happiness, then each time you have that, you should get equal happiness. More you have, more happiness you should get. No. When somebody gives you the 5th piece of cake or forces the 10th piece of cake on you, you want to run away, you want to throw up. How is it that the same thing can give you happiness and the same thing cannot give you happiness? Because that thing is not giving you happiness. The happiness is shining forth from within us. Well, you'll say, all right, let the happiness shine forth from within us, but at least I need the cake to make it shine forth from within me. So ultimately, I do need the cake. I do need the things outside. But at this point, a smart person will think, wait a minute. If happiness is within me, if what I'm seeking throughout my life is within me all the time, it is obscured only by my restless mind, by my turbulent mind, by the desires in my mind. Wouldn't it be a smarter way to be happy if I just calm down my mind and let go of those desires? Instead of struggling in the world outside to satisfy those desires, and if I do get satisfied finally, all the result I get is mind calms down. Somebody said, our entire consumer economy is driven by the psychological forces of tension and release of tension. You build up a tension, a desire, by advertisement or whatever, and you get it, a release of tension. And that release of tension is happiness. That's how we are accustomed to getting happiness from the world outside. But imagine if I could let go, if it's possible to let go of those desires, to settle the mind down in a serene mind, in a calm mind, would I not be happy? If this Vedantic theory is right, can I put it to the test? And Vedanta says you should. That's a smart way of doing it. If you are convinced about Vedanta, that you are not the body and mind, not subject to the limitations of flesh or the flickering mind, but an unchanging, immortal consciousness, a spirit beyond body and mind. In that case, calming the mind down, letting go of desires would be a much wiser way of enjoying the happiness which is your own property. It belongs to you. It is you yourself. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I'll share something. One of the ways in which I was I was inspired to become a monk is, I saw this monastery near our house, and I saw these people wearing this funny orange dress. They didn't have a car like my dad, didn't have a job like my dad, didn't have a family like my mom and dad, and they didn't even have a host of relatives. They couldn't go out to the hotel to eat whenever they liked, or they couldn't order takeout whenever they liked. They didn't go on vacations. They mostly meditated and helped other people. And what struck me was, they were the happiest people I'd ever seen. How it struck me, I was a school kid at that time. How is it possible that all the things that my parents were trying to get in life, and succeeding to in some extent and not succeeding to in other cases, but that was life for them. All these things, these people were not pursuing, and they were happy. They were absolutely happy. That is the proof of the core idea that happiness is not got by external possessions, external activities, rather what happens inside. The happiness is your own nature, which shines out if you can settle the mind down. And here we find, it says here, the otherworldly happiness, the highest happiness in this world, and after death one can go to other worlds and get happiness 100 times the happiness of this rich person, in this rich young person. You can get in the higher heavens. But those who are convinced about Vedanta, those who are on the spiritual path, those who are spiritual, I'm not adding the not religious, but spiritual, they can get the same happiness. Which happiness? Not just the happiness of the rich young person in this world, but the 100 times more happiness of that person in the next world. You can get it in this world itself if, let me quote, Te ye shatam manusha anandaha sa eko manushya gandharvanam anandaha shrotriyasya chakama hatasya. Shrotriya, the one who is convinced about Vedanta, who's convinced that we are not the body and mind, that there is a spiritual reality within us, which transcends the limited person which we seem to be. And the goal is to find this out, to realize this, to know our true identity. If this becomes the pursuit in life, of course, I'm speaking about this from the point of view of the path of knowledge. It could be from the path of devotion also. If somebody becomes convinced that God exists. God exists. You see, somebody asked, what is the essence of the message of Sri Ramakrishna? The essence is, first, God exists, God is real. Second, God can be realized, God can be experienced. Third, experiencing God is the purpose of life. If you ask, what is the purpose of life? He says, experiencing God is the purpose of life. We may say, no, it might be your purpose of life, but it certainly isn't mine. My purpose of life is, I have to build up this company, I have to get this degree from somewhere, and I have a family to look after. This is my purpose of life, if you say. The Upanishad says, with all of this, what are you trying to achieve? Well, I'm trying to be happy. This happiness which you are seeking, just another name for that is God. This ultimate, permanent, unchanging happiness transcending the sorrows of this world. So God realization is the aim of life. He's not recommending that it should be the aim of life. He's not pushing it to you. He's just telling you what you are doing. With unknowingly you do it, it's life. Do it knowingly, it's spirituality. So God realization is the purpose of life. Whose life? Your life, everybody else's life. You are here, you know it. Those who are not here, they don't know it, but they are pursuing the same thing. They are pursuing it in indirect ways, through worldly happiness. So the goal of life, if I'm convinced, is God realization, is spiritual illumination, moksha, nirvana, salvation, whatever you call it. That is the goal of my life. And one more thing, very important. Jakama hatasya. One must step away from the mad pursuit of happiness in the world outside. Stop chewing that bone. You see, trying to get happiness outside is based on a delusion that those things will give me happiness. If I know for certain the happiness is within me and radiating outwards, then why should I pursue that? Why should I pursue that? For what reason? So a spiritual seeker must step away from that pursuit. Doesn't have to become a monk or a nun, can perfectly well be in the world. Somebody has to take care of a family, somebody has to do a job. Not everybody has to become a monk or a nun, of course not. But internally, one must become something like a monk or a nun, searching for spiritual realization. And once you do that, the Upanishad says, the happiness of this person multiplied 100 times, this worldly happiness multiplied by 100 times, which is promised to this person in the higher heavens after life, that happiness you will get right away. So this person who takes up a Vedantic way of life, who takes up a Vedantic goal, a spiritual seeker, when my aim is spiritual realization, I would like to know who am I would like to find God, experience God in my life. What they are saying is, make that your sole purpose in life. It shouldn't be a part of a to-do list. You know, number one, I have to go to Walgreens to pick up these things, and number two, I have to drop off the kids at the school, and number three, I have to realize God. Not in that way. I have to realize God. That's my one and only purpose of life. And the rest of it, whether you're going shopping or dropping up the kids in the school, all of that has to be integrated into the spiritual life. Believe me, it can all be converted into spiritual practice. Child rearing as spiritual practice. It can be done. Shopping as spiritual practice. Yeah, even that. So, now once you come to this path, what do you do actually? Well, it's very interesting. What you do is what goes under the name of spiritual practice.
And now we will listen to Rupert Spira, and he is talking about the illusion of the state of bliss.
Not to mistake this blissful dance for awareness itself, because it comes and goes, the blissful dance. It's not always there. And if we mistake that for the true peace or happiness of awareness, then when it's gone, we're going to feel let down or disappointed. So it's true that sometimes awareness floods into the foreground of experience, and experience is totally lit up, brighter than usual, by the light of awareness. And as you say, everything sparkles, everything dances. That's fine. Enjoy it. But don't think, that's the experience that I've been waiting for all my life. Now I must hang on to it, because it's an appearance. It will go. And if you have invested your happiness in that experience, you will feel that your happiness has gone with it. In the traditional Advaita teaching, it's called Anandamaya Kosha, the illusion of the sheath of happiness. So it's fine. While it's present, just totally enjoy it. But don't mistake it for the ever-present underlying peace or happiness of your true nature. It's a reflection of it, a manifestation of it in the mind, the body, and the world. And that makes the mind, the body, and the world shine brightly. And it's intoxicating and enjoyable. Enjoy it. But don't get lost in it, or try to hold on to it.
Thank you. Is that movement ever not there? That's another point of this for me, because at my most still times, when my inner space seems vast, and if I was to give it a color, it would be black, there's still this.
Well, you say it would be black, but you would know it. Yes?
Yeah.
In other words, it would, in order to see the black has to be illumined by light or by knowing. So it's not really black, it's white. Because if you didn't, in order to claim it as black, you must see it. It must be lit up by something. How is it that we can see the black outside? It's because it's lit up. It's not completely black. It's not completely nothing. If it was nothing, we couldn't claim, I see it. So even that apparent nothingness is lit up by the light of awareness.
But it may be at the best times that it's that light that brings with it joy. And in a way, my question is, if that's the light of awareness, then it's always there.
Yes. Yes, but it's not always there. That joy is not always there, bubbling in the foreground of experience. Think of your true nature of awareness as peace in the background, peace that is constantly in the background of experience. And that from time to time, that peace bubbles over into the foreground and is experienced as happiness. In other words, think of happiness and peace as the same thing. In fact, Yvonne Amar said this beautiful thing, that happiness is peace in motion, and peace is happiness at rest. So get in contact first with the peace. It's easier to feel that peace is ever present in the background of all experience. Even when there seems to be agitation in the mind or body, you can feel awareness like a drone underneath it or behind it. You may not feel the presence of happiness then, but you feel this peaceful background on top of which, or in front of which, the agitation of the mind, the body, and the world is taking place. And then from time to time, this peace comes out of the background, and it's like it floods the foreground of experience. That is the overflowing. That is the bubbling up of joy in the mind, the body, and the world. And then that joy quietens down, and it just goes into the background again. So don't expect a happy state always to be present, a happy state of mind. The mind is from time to time struck with this happiness, and then a happy state of mind is present. But even when that happy state of mind comes to an end, all that's happened is that the happiness has just relaxed and is now present as peace in the background. So obviously, for instance, you may be attending, let's say you were attending a very sad occasion, the death of a loved one. It's unlikely on such an occasion that joy and happiness is going to be overflowing in the foreground of your experience. But nevertheless, you can still feel this deep peace in the background, underneath all the thoughts and feelings that are taking place. That peace will later on express itself as happiness in the foreground of experience. So when I speak of happiness, I'm not speaking about a colourful state of the mind or the body. It could be something that's very quiet in the background, more akin to peace. It could be thought of more as the absence of problems, the absence of desire. Just a feeling of being totally okay with things the way they are. It doesn't necessarily come with a broad smile on its face. It does from time to time, but not always. Am I responding to your question, or is there something that I'm missing?
No, it's great.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now we will listen to Nome talk about happiness, reality, and identity.
How could you, being happiness itself, ever be unhappy? How could you, the reality itself, absolute existence, which ever is, ever cease to be? How could you, of the nature of the self, which is being consciousness bliss, ever be another, something different from your nature? Such is only because of ignorance, which takes the form of misidentification. From the confusion regarding identity comes confusion regarding reality and happiness. If you are not the body, then there will be no unhappiness regarding being the performer of action, the condition or state of the body, its qualities, its attributes, its sensations. If you know that you are not the mind, then you remain undefined by any thought ever conceived. If there is the realization that you are not the ego, then the very root of unhappiness, of the confusion regarding what is real and what is not, the very root of mistaken impressions regarding your identity is absent. Happiness, reality or existence, an identity that is your true self, are one and the same thing. To find happiness that is unconditional, uncaused, and perpetual, know yourself. To know reality, know yourself. For your view of yourself will invariably become involved in your view of what exists. To know yourself, deeply inquire, as Sri Bhagavan advises, who am I? And with an introspection that is non-objective in nature, being will know itself as it is. How could being ever cease? It is unborn and imperishable. It is not to be misidentified with the ego, with the mind, with the body, or with anything of this world. How could consciousness, which is of the very nature of supreme knowledge, entertain any ignorance or illusion? By realizing your nature, you find the knowledge, the wisdom that is innate. And it is eternal. How could bliss, Ananda, ever suffer? The bliss of your true self is immortal. To find that supreme happiness or peace that is neither given nor taken away, neither created nor destroyed. Know yourself. Question yourself and abandon the tendency to misidentify yourself with anything that actually you are not, such as all that is transitory, all that is objective, all that is differentiated. Turn within and find yourself to be that which is infinite, eternal, stateless, partless, beginningless, endless. If your experience appears to be in any way otherwise, inquire more deeply. Who am I? Where the notion of an embodied individuality subsides, the truth shines.
And now we will take a few minutes and meditate. So breathe in and out. Notice the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. Take long, slow breaths. Now just notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist without thinking about it or feeling it. That knowledge is deeper than thoughts or feeling. And now inquire, investigate within yourself. Can you separate your sense of being from your sense of consciousness? Look and see. Can you have one without the other? Or are they both always there, inseparable? And then ask yourself, who am I? What is the nature of my existence? If it comes and goes, it's not who I am. Who I am is always there. What is this within you? All right. Now we'll have a short chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more for you, a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on the screen next. These satsangs will continue in the coming weeks with this series based on the Ramana Maharshi book, Who Am I? Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you.